My commitment and its magnitude sort of dwarfs itself when you put it in perspective with what Blessy has done for the film.
Right.
Blessy was the highest paid director in the Malayalam industry. At that stage in his career, he decides that he's going to just for the next 16 years do one film. Losing weight is nothing.
Prithvi Raj and Malayalam film director Blessy's 16-year-long labor of love, Adu Jeevitham or The Goat Life, is out in theatres, and in today's review, I'm going to tell you all about what's good, what's bad, and what went behind making this movie, and well, should you be watching it or not? So, Adu Jeevitham is based on a book by the same name by author Benjamin, and it's a true story of a person named Najib. The story follows Najib, a worker from Kerala, who is misled and stranded in Saudi and ends up in the middle of a desert at a place where his primary role is to take care of goats and camels. His living conditions are inhuman and he's treated horribly by the two locals present at the site. The story follows his journey over 3 years, lost and helpless in the desert. Now, before I go into the good and bad for this movie, I want to tell you more about this project and what's gone into making this extremely challenging film. So the idea to make this film started about 16 years ago, but I just want to clarify over here that it did not actually take 16 years to make this film, and I'll break that down for you. So Blessy, the director of this film, stumbled upon the novel in 2008, and in 2009 he went ahead and bought the rights to it. By 2010, he had a screenplay ready and filming was supposed to start in Rajasthan and Dubai, but that didn't end up happening. Around this time, he'd already been in discussion with Prithvi Raj for this film, and Prithvi Raj had shown his interest, but was busy with other projects as well. Post this, a number of years went by and this film didn't move.
Because even back in 2009, Mr. Blessy's vision for the film was so gigantic, it was so huge, that at that period in time, it was next to impossible to envisage something like this from the Malayalam industry.
The film did gain some traction in 2015, and Prithvi Raj did tell Blessy how it would be possible for them to make this mammoth film. But Blessy insisted on collaborating with the right producers and that he did not want to compromise on his vision.
From the very get set go, Blessy was very, very particular that this is not going to be a green screen studio film. He always knew that he wanted to go to the real locations, the terrains, and organically shoot it in a real environment, and that's exactly what he did.
Eventually, in 2017, Blessy found the right producers in Jimmy Jean-Louis and Steve Adams, making this an international co-production involving companies in India and the US. Shooting for this movie started in March 2018, mainly in Jordan, the Sahara Desert of Algeria, and Kerala. Now, there were a number of challenges which affected this shoot, the major one being COVID. Not only did this completely throw the schedule off, they also had the team stranded in Jordan in the desert for almost 3 months during COVID.
And this crew, we were stuck in the middle of a desert in Wadi Rum, in a desert camp. And every other camps in Wadi Rum had shut down. And only this one camp was remaining open because we had nowhere else to go. Like this giant elephant in the room with amongst us was, we really did not have a date on when we could go back.
Right.
At one particular point at the end of the second month, we were hearing stories about this could be a year.
Yeah.
Eventually, the shoot was finally completed in July 2022 after COVID. So now that we know the efforts that went into making this project, let's see what's good in it. For starters, the acting and casting. A lot of thought and hard work has gone into casting here and subsequently getting the right performances out of the cast. Not a single person seems out of place, and especially the non-Indian casting is spot on. There are some terrific Arab actors, with Talib Al-Balushi being the main one, and I feel that this was the need of the hour as a huge part of the movie shows the struggle of lack of communication or miscommunication as neither party speaks the other's language. Amala Paul plays Prithvi Raj's wife and she's portrayed her character very well. K.R. Gokul plays the character of Prithvi Raj's friend who gets separated from him in the desert, and he's done a phenomenal job in his role. He's also lost a lot of weight for his character and portrays the struggle of being in the desert very effectively, especially in the last 40 minutes of the movie. Jimmy Jean-Louis has portrayed his character really well too. And lastly, coming to the main man, Prithviraj. Take a bow. What a stellar performance. He has completely immersed himself into the character, losing 35 kgs over the course of the film for his character's transformation.
My teeth started shaking at one point, because it wasn't fun. It wasn't a good feeling. But thankfully, this is one of those films where you're so deep into the character arc that when you're on set and you're in the process of making the film and portraying the character, thankfully you sort of forget that you're hungry, you forget that you're weak. That helped me.
His acting is spot on and you always connect with his desperation, his pain and his emotion throughout the film. I genuinely feel he deserves a national award for this. The next good thing in this movie is the direction. All the years worth of effort has really paid off for Blessy, and him standing his ground and not compromising on his craft speaks volumes in this film. The scenes are delicately handled in the movie and very few scenes end up feeling too melodramatic or underwhelming. He's maintained the right balance and emotion through the film and used a slow burn approach to truly get you into the skin and mindset of the character. His aesthetic choices in the film also work for most part, and I overall feel he's made a very difficult film with a lot of honesty.
Anybody could imagine maybe a film like this, but to see that vision through and to be faced with so many challenges and obstacles and still not compromise even 0.01% on that vision and hold on to it with such conviction and see it through, and today releases and about to release this film, that is incredible. That is incredible. I'm a huge fan of Blessy the filmmaker. I think I'm a bigger fan of Blessy the man. It is just so rare to find such conviction in people.
And overall, I really appreciate some of the choices he's made. For example, the movie on purpose has no subtitles for when people talk in Arabic, and this is to make the audience feel as lost and as desperate as the protagonist. There is also a lot of layering and subtext in this movie. For example, when picked up at the airport, Prithviraj and his friend are made to sit at the back of an open pickup van, just like how you'd often find goats. Earlier in the film, you have Prithviraj telling his mother about how she should make some mutton with coconut for him, and later he also tells Amala, his wife, about how he loves his mom's mutton biryani. But later in the film, when he's given a big rack of lamb, they show him sit amongst the goats and he has no inclination whatsoever to eat it, and on the contrary, feels repulsed by it. I looked a lot for Blessy's interviews in English but didn't find much and noticed he's more comfortable talking in Malayalam. But still, through these, I hope you get a sense of his commitment and vision for this project. The next best thing about this movie is its original score and soundtrack, given by none other than A.R. Rahman.
I could experience what the main character would have gone through. Seeing those camels, seeing sheep, and looking at the faces and what they're trying to say, and looking at these rocks, looking at the sand, you gain so much of interaction with nature. And I feel that's very important for the music.
The movie score is just amazing. It gives you feels in certain scenes. There's especially this one sequence where there's a sandstorm, which is firstly shown very well through VFX, but the background score for this sequence is even better, and the entire sequence just feels like a brilliant work of art. Now, speaking of sound, the film's sound designer is Rasool Pukuti, who's already won an Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire. He has done a fabulous job, and his attention to detail in the sound is insane if you listen in closely. I know people who have worked with him before, and they have told me some crazy stories of his process to design sound. Now, speaking of the editing, the movie is edited by A. Srikar Prasad, who is one of the most prominent editors out there, and he's done a great job here as well as an editor. My favorite sequence was where he cuts from water flowing in a desert to backwaters of Kerala through a carefully cut and designed match cut, and this also helps transport us between the two environments and the state of mind Prithviraj is in. Next, the movie's VFX is really good. By Indian standards, I would say it is groundbreaking, but by international standards also, I would say pretty good. They've used a mix of real goats and VFX for the animals, and it looks completely realistic. At no point do you feel any of the animals look fake, except maybe for this one sequence where there's a sandstorm and you see camels running in it. The film has some brilliant cinematography as well and has some beautiful looking shots. And lastly, the film's makeup and prosthetics. The makeup and prosthetics of this film are spot on. lots of detail at every stage to portray the character through their journey in the desert. Even the injuries they face, the cuts, the bruises, the prosthetics look completely real and believable. Now, on a side note, I also want to give a shout out to the entire crew of this film. To make something of this scale in such harsh conditions is extremely challenging, and here's just an example of just one thing that could possibly go wrong in an environment like this in a desert. So, for example, when you're shooting in a desert, you obviously have your entire crew over there, right? And you need the camera to be set in a certain place, you need the camera team behind it, you need focus pullers, you need the costume team giving touch-ups to the people, to the actors, because at that point, constantly, given the weather and everything, you are going to have to maintain a certain look. And while all this is happening, something very trivial over here. Every time people walk in the desert, their footsteps are going to show on the sand, but these footsteps cannot show in the actual movie. So just clearing all these footsteps out every time a new take is taken, using VFX to do a certain part of this as well. Also, it's very common knowledge that in deserts, as the wind kind of goes back and forth, the sand dunes change their shape. So at times what would happen is what you see right now as a dune might be a different looking dune maybe half an hour later, and this would really mess up continuity. So all of these factors make shooting in an environment like this extremely challenging. So big shout out to the entire crew of this team to make this mammoth, crazy challenging project possible.
Because I know eventually, even I knew back then, eventually when the film will hit the theatres, as you're seeing today, I'll get limelight. Bless Chetan, people will talk about Bless Chetan. Maybe people will talk about the chief technicians. Nobody, except for the scrolling titles at the end, you won't know who are those people. You wouldn't know who got stuck there. You wouldn't know who was away from family for so long. You wouldn't know that. But even then, this film meant so much to them. That was such a gratifying experience.
So it seems like this film has a lot going for it. But is there anything bad here? Well, let's take a look. So for starters, the initial sequences of Prithviraj and his friend at the airport don't look as good on camera. They look like those from a mid-sized movie and don't have the same crispness and finesse. A few shots are also overexposed. The grade for these is also fairly ordinary, and visually they just don't stand out as much. Apart from this, there are a couple of sequences where they show Prithviraj and Amala jump into the backwaters. They jump from a height and their fall or dive seems a little fake. You can tell they are harnessed, and the projectile of their fall feels jerky and not natural. Now, there were a couple of minor flaws in the movie as well. So for example, in this one scene, they show a car has come to Prithviraj's site and he sees himself in the mirror of that car and is shocked to see how he looks. This scene is supposed to be a very hard-hitting scene, as it's the first time he realizes how barbaric and unkempt he looks, indicating it's the first time in months that he's seen a mirror. But prior to this, they show him sleeping at the back of a pickup van every night. So technically, he could have easily seen himself in those mirrors or windows and would have already known what he'd look like. Honestly, apart from this, not a lot wrong with this movie. Now, having said all this, I feel this movie is not for everyone, and I'm going to break this down. So this movie is almost 3 hours long, and it's a slow burn movie, as the director wants you to feel the journey and pain of the character. So oftentimes, there'll be long scenes where the story might not move ahead, but you're seeing more of the pain and frustration of the character. If you like fast-paced films or don't have the patience to sit through something like this for 3 hours, then this isn't for you. Also, the movie is depressing for a huge part, so if you want to go to the movies to get entertained or refreshed, then this isn't for you either. Honestly, otherwise, I would highly recommend you watch this movie. I'm giving this 4 out of 5. The movie needs to be watched and appreciated, and only by doing so are such films going to be made more in India. This is something different, fresh and daring. So definitely do give this one a watch. Thanks so much for stopping by. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. Please also go ahead and share my videos and drop in whatever thoughts you have in the comments section. And guys, lastly, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It's just one small click for you, but it makes a big difference to me. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you very soon.